Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Senior White House officials did not know who operated the Autopen, and its use was not sufficiently controlled or documented to prevent abuse. This is from the GOP House Oversight investigation. There's now a criminal probe almost certainly underway. The Department of Justice and I believe the FBI are already on the case. The question, ladies and gentlemen, if you just logged on to this and hit subscribe, if you're new, go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after and check out the latest segment. And to my super chat, I can't do this without you. Thank you. The question, whether you're liberal or conservative, is did Biden know the people that he was pardoning? Did he know that the pardons via Autopen were taking place? Yes or no? If that's the case, why didn't any official go on record and testify that they knew who was running the Autopen or that Biden told them to utilize the Autopen? Nobody has testified under oath that they know who operated the Autopen. Furthermore, Biden was kicked out by George Clooney, by Democrats. Why did they kick him out of contention? The answer to that makes the pardons unconstitutional. I might have been reading this wrong in the earlier segment. 82 cases out of 87 cases, 82 times federal district courts ruled against Trump. Circuit courts, 15 cases out of 22, they ruled against Trump. The Supreme Court, President Trump wins 15 out of 16 major cases. Okay, I think it's like maybe 16 or 17 out of 18 now. He wins 94% of the time in the Supreme Court. Again, this is a fantastic article. This comes from a Brennan Center article titled, The Supreme Court Must Explain Why They Always Side with Trump. Well, Democrats must explain why they're always on the wrong side of history, or they're always engaged in unconstitutional behavior or unconstitutional verdicts against Trump. Hit subscribe to this channel. I'm not accusing this man of any criminal activity. However, this is a good starting point in addition to the George Clooney op-ed. The question is, why did George Clooney write that op-ed? The answer points directly to the pardons being unconstitutional, null and void. The Supreme Court will back that up because there's a criminal probe. Likely people will be indicted for a cover-up. This is Biden's doctor. I'm not accusing him of any crime. Hit subscribe if you're new to my super chat. Thank you.
Biden's fitness for office and your financial relationship with the Biden family. For the purposes of the deposition, objections must be stated concisely in a non-argumentative and non-suggestive manner. If the witness refuses to answer a question to preserve a privilege, the committee may seek a ruling from the chair. If the chair overrules any such objection, the witness shall be ordered to answer. Do you understand?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
If the witness continues to refuse to answer a question despite being ordered to do so, the witness may be subject to sanction. Do you understand?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Finally, I will note for everyone here today that the contents of what we discuss in the deposition are confidential under the House deposition regulations. Under the rules, the chairman and ranking minority members shall consult before any release of testimony or transcripts, including portions thereof. This means it is a violation of House and committee rules to disclose contents of this deposition prior to its official release. Can the reporter please swear in the witness?
Will you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go off the record. Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
So with all due respect to the doctor, I am not accusing Dr. O'Connor of any criminal activity. However, there's nothing pertaining to patient-client confidentiality pertaining regarding that question. That's a political question. Were you ever told to lie? That has nothing, that has nothing to do with Biden's health or, were you ever told to lie is a question about politics. This is exactly why the Supreme Court, after a criminal probe, will like they've done 94% of the time, side with President Trump. The pardons are null and void because Biden was forced out of office because he allegedly, he had almost certainly major cognitive issues and issues pertaining to his brain. We have no clue. There's nobody testified that they knew exactly how these pardons were conducted. Everybody has a different story, and nobody knew who ran the Autopen. Okay, the Autopen pardons are almost certainly null and void. The Supreme Court, after a GOP criminal probe, will find them null and void because Democrats forced out their own president. It was an atrocity politically and an abomination. It's worse than what they did to Bernie Sanders. I thought Biden was a terrible president. They should never have forced him out. You go in there. What's the phrase? You go in with the horse. I forgot the phrase, but you went in there with Biden. Why did they force him out? Harris polled lower than Biden. Biden at least won his primary. Everybody knew that he had cognitive issues, but they still went with him. So why did they kick him out in 24?
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Dr. O'Connor, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician's patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must rely on my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Dr. O'Connor, did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Dr. O'Connor, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
So a number of people pleaded the Fifth, but I want to get to exactly why this is one of the greatest scandals in addition to Russiagate. I mean, Democrats they just simply can't do politics without major cover-ups, scandals, all of media, all of Hollywood protecting them. Why did George Clooney write the op-ed? That's the question. Check this out.
Tonight we check in with the poor man's Greg Gutfeld, George Clooney. Remember, he wrote a scathing op-ed prior to the election calling on Joe Biden to drop out? And this week he took to CNN, the only place he's seen less than in his own movies, to gloat. God, I hope
So you're going to hear just the most hilariously absurd interview. And these are the people who pontificate and preach and condemn and judge. And the corruption's so rampant. I mean, President Trump wins every battleground state, the popular vote, the presidency, Congress, the House, and yet still the ladies at The View are preaching and condemning. And it wasn't George Clooney's fault that Democrats lost. George Clooney's op-ed is linked directly to why the Supreme Court will find the pardons null and void. Check this out. And Jake Tapper asks the most amusing questions.
God, I hope Jake Tapper doesn't plant his lips firmly on George's puckered ass and tell him he did something that a lot of people call brave when he wrote his op-ed.
You yourself did something that a lot of people would call brave when you wrote your op-ed.
Everyone knows.
I don't know if it was brave. It was a civic duty. When I saw people.
Gutfeld, George Clooney.
So sorry about that. How on earth could this be viewed as brave? This was an acknowledgement of a cover-up that happened, that was started in 2019, 2020. This is why people question, and President Trump questioned how he lost to somebody who couldn't communicate. But the way they see it, it's the way Democrats see this as is politics as usual. It's just fine. There's nothing wrong to it. It proves that the pardons are null and void. This proves the pardons are null and void, or almost certainly null and void. If they had to kick him out of contention, why on earth did they allow him to win the primary? Well, the answer is obvious. They had nobody else. The primaries are a facade, a charade, a farce. They don't have functioning primaries. Then they pontificate about democracy and the republic and the Constitution. They don't even have functioning primaries. They just pick whomever they want to become a nominee. Well, but they pretend that they have functioning primaries. That's the problem. Then Biden wins, then he's forced out because he has cognitive issues. Then Democrats say, oh my God, what's wrong with the pardons? But you forced him out because of issues upstairs. That's what's wrong. How do we know that he himself issued those pardons? We don't. And nobody testified that he did.
Remember, he wrote a scathing op-ed prior to the election calling on Joe Biden to drop out? And this week he took to CNN, the only place he's seen less than in his own movies, to gloat. God, I hope Jake Tapper doesn't plant his lips firmly on George's puckered ass and tell him he did something that a lot of people call brave when he wrote his op-ed.
You yourself did something that a lot of people would call brave when you wrote your op-ed.
Well, I don't know if it was brave. It was a civic duty. When I saw people on my side of the street not telling the truth, I thought that was time to.
Are people still mad at you for that?
Some people, sure.
Wow, if that's Clooney with makeup, imagine what he looks like without it, huh? Now remember, Clooney's the same guy who held a star-studded fundraiser for Joe weeks before he dropped out and only called for him to quit after his disastrous debate. Clooney ignored concerns over Biden's age for years, only to magically come to the conclusion that he was demented when America finally saw what Clooney had been hiding. That's the problem with Dems. They're obedient shills for awful people, then pretend otherwise once voters see that they're full of. But remember, we were pointing out Joe's dementia before it was cool.
That's the issue. Everybody was. Everyone was saying, how on earth is Biden going to win, slurring his speech. Then he gets the most votes ever. That doesn't make any sense. Simply saying there's no evidence to the contrary is not a rebuttal. There was no real FBI investigation. The FBI was firmly on the side of the Democratic Party. That's why they worked with the trust and safety team at Twitter to silence and suspend and ban conservatives on that platform before Elon Musk purchased it. That's what the issue of free speech was about. You had government agencies siding with the Democratic Party, and we saw that from the Twitter files, with the trust and safety team at Twitter. They were the gatekeepers of American political news. You would literally be deplatformed on every social media platform if you talked about Hunter's laptop after a certain time, and when they said it was Russian disinformation. That's what's called free speech, or an infringement upon free speech. But the issue is that it was a cover-up. It was a cover-up from 2020 to 2024. Everyone knew it. And Democrats expect the country to behave like Democratic voters in the primary. But the country doesn't just simply accept that. They accept Bernie Sanders being cheated in 2016. They accept Biden being forced out after he won his primary. That's normal to them. That's politics to them. To the average American, it's completely unethical, immoral, bizarre, strange, and an example of the worst politics possible. But let's continue. This is all leading to criminal investigations, indictments. People are going to lie, turn on each other, say the other person didn't say this, and they're all pleading the fifth now because we're now talking about a possible or likely criminal conspiracy. People lied about Biden's mental capacity or fitness. He issued pardons. Those pardons likely were not the direct result of Biden wanting them to be signed by Autopen.
We knew Biden was the worst president ever, which probably means Jimmy Carter died a happy man. Right, Mr. P?
Jimmy Carter died a happy man. You know why? Because he wasn't the worst president. Joe Biden was.
We don't deserve him. Now, before returning to his exhibit at Madame Tussauds, Clooney opined on the future of the party. I bet there's one person in particular he thinks is spectacular.
There's one person in particular I think is spectacular. There are a few who I think is levitating above that is Wes Moore. I like him a lot. I think he could be someone we could all join in behind. We have to find somebody rather soon. It's our job now to put together a proper team to stand up.
But doesn't George Clooney know they had a primary? They already had a primary. This is hilarious. Why even have a primary? Biden had the same cognitive issues before that debate that he did after the debate that he did during the debate. But see, again, it's like the mentality is, and I remember I used to be a Democrat my whole life up until like 8 years ago. I remember the mentality. Anything goes. Liz Cheney could be a Democrat nominee tomorrow. George Clooney would back her. The furthest left socialist communists would say, yes, Liz Cheney for president. She's not perfect, but it's better than J.D. Vance.
Because we're right now polling very poorly.
I love that. Levitating above, as opposed to sinking to the bottom, like his last movie. But Dems always love to use deep-sounding words when all it does is remind us that without a script, they suck. Of course, the Dems are polling at record lows, perhaps because their leaders keep embracing the wrong side of every issue, like immigration. A recent poll found that 74% of Americans favor deporting illegals who've committed crimes. You don't get that many people to agree on anything unless it's me wearing more tank tops. And because you asked, I will. Of course, the Dems are in a bind. The woman who lost all 7 swing states to Trump is still a favorite. I mean, this is a chick who thought the Rust Belt was the thing Doug has to wear to keep from knocking up nannies. Yeah. Kamala's smile could kill the mood on a porn set.
I love Greg Gutfeld, but I gotta, just for the algorithm right now, I guess it's fine. It's on, Greg Gutfeld is fantastic, and he's right. And he's right on pretty much everything he says. The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is that they forced out Biden for Harris, but Harris polled lower than Biden. Harris never got a single primary vote. Why do they have primaries? Why did they force Biden out? And then why did George Clooney write the op-ed? Well, the answers to those questions lead directly to a cover-up. Okay, let's listen to this. This is Jill Biden's top staffer, or Joe Biden's chief of staff or top staffer?
Jake, I have a question. Are we afforded the opportunity to make an opening statement?
No, not today. Can the reporter please swear in the witness?
Sure. Sir, would you please raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. My clock reads 10:10. The majority's hour will begin now. Mr. Bernal, did you ever advise President Joe Biden to pardon his son, Hunter Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Thank you. We're going to go off the record real quick. Okay, we'll go back on the record. Mr. Bernal, was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Bernal has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Mr. Bernal, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Bernal, did any unelected official or family member of President Joe Biden execute the duties of the presidency?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Bernal has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Mr. Bernal, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Bernal, did President Joe Biden ever instruct you to lie regarding his health at any time, including but not limited in your testimony to Congress today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Again, I'm not accusing Anthony Bernal of committing a crime. The issue is that when people are when top staffers are pleading the Fifth pertaining to a very simple question, well, how are these pardons conducted? Were you told to lie? This is not like what happened with Trump Russia, where they accused people of things they didn't do and hid exculpatory evidence. This shouldn't be this. That was a criminal probe where there was no crime, and they literally used a Steele dossier purchased by Clinton to set up and frame people. This has nothing to do with Trump framing any of these individuals, the doctor, any of the chief of staff, all the staffers. They just don't want to. What is the? You do have staffers that testify they didn't plead the Fifth. Why did some plead the Fifth and some just simply testify? That's an interesting question to ask.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Bernal has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Mr. Bernal, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Mr. Bernal, is it your intention to decline to answer all questions put to you today by the committee on the basis of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination?
I can represent that is his intention.
Thank you. Does the minority wish to ask questions?
Yes, we do.
Go off the record.
All right, we're back on the record. Would the members who just came into the room identify themselves, starting with Mr. Donald?
Basic functions is to protect innocent men who otherwise might be ensnared by ambiguous circumstances, end quote. The record is also clear that persons of the full range of the political spectrum in recent and historical congressional investigations.
All right, so the question is, why did this take place? Okay, why did Why did they force out Biden? That's a huge question. Okay?
So
Yeah, it's worse than Watergate. That was one break-in. The Biden presidency by Autopen went on for years, keeping America in the dark to this day about who was really acting as president. And the story keeps getting worse. Former Jill Biden aide, dubbed her work husband, Anthony Bernal, long thought to be a prime.
So he did plead the fifth in testimony. This was before he agreed, I believe.
Prime Biden puppet master just got hit by a subpoena by Congressman James Comer after refusing to appear before the House Oversight Committee for a transcribed interview today. The former First Lady, of course, insists all along, though, that Joe was fully in command.
I did not create a cocoon around him. I mean, you saw him in the Oval Office. You saw him making speeches. He wasn't hiding somewhere. I didn't have him, sequestered in some place.
One Biden aide did show up, though, on the Hill this week, Neera Tanden. She admitted she was authorized to direct Autopen signatures, but when she was pressed on who gave final clearance for the decisions, she claimed she had no idea. Here to weigh in is House Oversight Committee member Congressman Byron Donalds. He's also running for governor in Florida. Congressman, do you believe that
if you're in Florida, vote for Byron Donalds for governor?
Neera Tanden is one of the top Biden aides for years, had no idea about who cleared these Autopen signatures?
No, I don't believe her. I think she's lying. I think she's obfuscating. And the reason why is they did build a cocoon around Joe Biden. They did not want Joe Biden really around members of Congress, cabinet officials. That's why there were really no cabinet meetings at all. I think the last one was run by Joe Biden. They did not want anybody in contact with him because, as you could quickly see, spending 5 minutes with the man, like the special counsel had to do, you realize that he had no real control over his mental capabilities in order to do the job as commander-in-chief. And Laura, look, compare Joe Biden's activity level to Donald Trump's today, Barack Obama's before him, George W. Bush before that, a completely different environment than the one that Joe Biden had in that White House. So that's why we're investigating.
A source close to Anthony Bernal told us that calling his non-appearance on the Hill a refusal is misleading. Apparently there's a request to reschedule the interview. So that's what they're saying. But
so that's who you saw plead the fifth after the doctor.
But look, if you want to clear this up, you could have cleared this up months ago, correct? I mean, when we found out there was an Autopen involved for a lot of decisions, not just for the ceremonial letters and so forth, that was easy to just clear up. But they've been running for cover, have they not been?
They've been running the entire time. Anthony Bernal was scheduled to come in today, but when the Trump administration waived executive privilege, all of a sudden he was a no-show. So that's why he got slapped with a subpoena. That's the real story. And so he needs to come in. We are going to make him come in and answer questions under oath, because we can't have a situation where an American president is essentially being run by his staff, not having any knowledge of what's going on, and signing documents, whether they're executive orders, legislation, or even the cordial letters that presidents will want to do. You can't have that stuff being signed without the expressed authorization of the president of the United States. And it is looking more and more that Joe Biden did not give his express authorization because he couldn't give an express authorization.
Well, I think it's probably a smaller list to ask, what key decisions did Joe Biden make? I mean, that's probably a better way to phrase it. I mean, give us the key decisions he actually made, because it doesn't seem like there were many.
It does not, and I think that's why you have the Bernals, the Neera Tandens, Jill Biden herself, the chief of staffs. The testimony I'm looking forward to is the White House doctors, because Joe Biden's medical records were actually held away from the American people. They were keeping those secret, unlike every other president that we've had.
Yeah, well,
So we can listen to that testimony again. I'm not accusing this man of any criminal activity.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go off the record. Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
So that was a political question, and he couldn't answer it because almost certainly, I'm not accusing him of any criminal activity, but almost certainly, he was told, he was either told in a roundabout way to lie or not tell the entire truth, because you don't need a medical, you don't need a formal, proper diagnosis to look at another human being and say that, to be, with all due respect, that person's one fry short of a Happy Meal. You don't need, see, Democrats say trust the experts, but any experts that disagree with them, they're like, oh my God, appeal to authority only works when the individual in authority is a liberal Democrat. So when President Trump's president, or when there are doctors or lawyers or experts who are conservative and give a viewpoint they don't like, oh, it's the end of the world. The issue here is that there was almost certainly, I'm not accusing the doctor, but there was almost certainly a cover-up. There was almost certainly a criminal cover-up, because the entire planet saw a president who had major issues, and the White House was saying, oh, these are deep, cheap, fake videos, and he's fine, and it's conspiracy theory. There was no proper chain of command. He made the decisions verbally, apparently, but nobody can go on record stating that he told them anything. White House officials did not know who operated the Autopen. And he would speak to people, let's say, only saw former president every 6 to 8 weeks. So these people are on record as stating that they would only see the president 6 to 8 weeks. Then this is interesting right here. Hunter was part of the decision-making process. This is very interesting. Zeitz testified that Biden included his son Hunter in the decision-making process for and meetings about pardons. So that, if Hunter was part of the decision-making process, the GOP oversight might ask to speak to him. The whole thing is so bizarre. And again, this is important to kind of remember. He was forced out for a reason. That reason makes the Supreme Court, the pardons null and void, and that reason will tie in directly to why the Supreme Court will make them null and void.
The race from the right and now the left. A top Washington Post columnist, David Ignatius, calling for President Biden to drop out.
Now, is George Clooney or is the Washington Post op-ed writer, are these election deniers? Do they deny the sanctity of Biden defeating Trump in 2020? I mean, are they denying the political capital, that he was the most popular? So the way the myth is, the political fantasy is that Biden was the most popular candidate of all time in American history. That's what the numbers show in 2020. In less than 4 years, he lost so much political capital from a Democratic Party that still wanted you to vote Democrat. He lost so much political capital that George Clooney and the Washington Post and others wrote op-eds telling him he should not run again. And the reason, obviously, is because of his mental capacity or fitness or cognitive abilities. And they also now want you to believe that everything was fine with the pardons. He got the most votes ever. They forced him out. And because they forced him out, regarding cognitive issues, that's why you should believe the pardons are completely constitutional and that he had direct knowledge of what the Autopen was doing. Does this make sense to anybody?
Of running for 2024. He did give a glowing review of the Biden presidency, adding that Biden was the right choice in 2020, but he cites some big concerns.
This combination of Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, and the polls show people feel uneasy.
Why on earth would people feel uneasy? He got the most votes. He had the greatest. He was the most popular candidate. He had the greatest amount of political capital, the most political capital of any presidential candidate in the history of the country, or whatever, in modern times. How did he lose all that support? Why did the poll numbers tank, aside from his performance as president? Why did they force him out? The answers to those questions lead directly to the pardons being unconstitutional.
About somebody who's 82 serving another 4-year term. That the combination of that and people's uneasiness is reflected in polls about the vice president succeeding him. Time is running out. In another month, it's going to be too late to have this conversation. So I thought.
Why would time be running out? He won his primary. The man won a presidential primary. He campaigned, I believe, in all 50 states. Who knows how many states he campaigned in, but he campaigned. He traveled around the country. I think he was primaried by a couple of left-leaning politicians. Okay, but he won his primary.
Before it was locked in stone, it was worth at least raising.
Well, he had a lot to say. The New York Times with this headline: as Democratic jitters grow, Biden campaign tries to showcase his vigor. The Times says that with low approval ratings and shaky public performances, that's kind, the president and his team are planning an ad blitz and trying to reassure voters about his age. Again, it's not his age.
Here we go again, another day, another.
It's how he's doing. The president is bucking tradition with a massive $25 million ad buy much earlier in the race than either of his recent predecessors. The two you see there and all the details. Power panel: John O'Caldwell, Fox News political analyst; Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama.
Like maybe a California governor, It's Tommy Lahren here. In talking with supporters about, I guess, their excitement for the president or the vice president, have you heard any of those supporters float any other names, like maybe a California?
Because people possible replacements, and then there's the practical side of it. There's a guy with over 1,000 delegates. His name is Joe Biden. That's right. And the vice president of the United States, even though she looks better in the head-to-head poll, in this poll with CNN, not in any others, she was trailing by about 6 or 7 points. And who would want to jump in this bifurcated campaign? This is your career too. And if you're in your 40s and you feel as though you're the next generation, why am I going to go pick up the tatters of a campaign and take on a buzzsaw like President Trump, who has never been stronger?
So there's some disagreement on the couch this morning about this. Me and Steve have been talking about it
in the rehearsal.
In the rehearsal, we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, we came in about 3. Right. Heavy pancake makeup on.
You mean 3 minutes before?
That's right, 3 minutes
top
before.
of the hour.
So
3 seconds.
There's a few reasons why I disagree with Steve. Steve thinks he's going to be replaced.
Biden will be. Biden will not be the nominee ultimately.
So I'm showing these. This is a trip down memory lane. Okay, this is exactly why people are talking about the Autopen. Okay, when liberal pundits say, "Oh my God, the Autopen, what a phony scandal." It's not a phony scandal. We don't know if Biden pardoned these, pardon Fauci, pardon Liz Cheney, Schiff, the Select Committee. We have no clue if he wanted to pardon them. We have no clue. He was literally forced out because of cognitive issues by his own political party and George Clooney. Then we should just simply suspend logic and reason and say, oh, everything's fine? No. If Democrats forced him out because they didn't trust that he had the mental capacity or capabilities to continue, then there's no reason why people should just simply assume that these pardons are constitutional, that he knew. The Supreme Court precedent is that the pardons have to start from the president has the power to pardon, not people running the Autopen or people around him.
Morning, the House Oversight Committee releasing its report on the investigation into former President Biden and his use of the Autopen and the alleged cover-up of his mental decline. The committee says executive action signed via Autopen should be null and void, recommending that the Justice Department look into whether Joe Biden authorized any of it himself. Biden aides Annie Tomasini, Anthony Bernal, and Karine Jean-Pierre, all facing heavy scrutiny for their part in this cover-up. Lawmakers also sending a letter to the D.C. Board of Medicine asking to investigate former White House physician Kevin O'Connor. They say this, quote, he facilitated the concealment by presenting incomplete annual exams, neglecting to conduct the cognitive exam warranted, and refusing to communicate transparently about.
But see, that wasn't, even if he did all of those things, there were people around him telling him to do so. If he did those things, I'm not accusing the doctor of doing anything criminal. If he did conceal, he was a part of people who conspired to conceal, a part of conspiracy, criminal conspiracy. Okay, we all know that Biden was forced out by his own political party, which directly correlates to the pardons being null and void.
About his medical care of the president and the role President Biden's political advisors played in it. Dr. O'Connor's annual medical assessments are incomplete and misleading as they do not include cognitive exams or mention a neurologist visiting the executive mansion 8 times in 8 months between 2023 and 2024 during the Biden presidency. Jean-Pierre aided the cover-up by refusing to answer questions from the press and from the committee about the neurologist's visit. This 91-page report includes more than a dozen transcribed interviews and numerous document requests. Chairman James Comer is calling this one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history.
Along with Russiagate and Clinton's servers, the greatest cybersecurity scandal in the history of mankind, since computers were invented, the issue is that the people who, those who testified didn't admit to any criminal wrongdoing. The problem, however, is that nothing makes sense. And the Republicans are closing in on the truth. The truth almost certainly is a whole lot of people covered up the fact that Biden had mental issues or cognitive issues. He wasn't aware of what was going on, and people either took it upon themselves to pardon the select committee or influence him in some way or take it upon themselves without the president's knowledge. He wasn't aware. If the president gave verbal authority like he said, nobody is stating that the president told them specifically to pardon the select committee. Okay? Here in this House Oversight Committee report, you can look here, there was no chain of command. There was no chain of command, there was no proper chain of custody, for the documents which predicated Biden's executive actions. Well, if there's no chain of command for the documents, then what happened? Biden just told people and they didn't write it down? They just tried to remember, what he said and then relay the pardons? Without documentation, he allegedly made decisions verbally without documentation. Okay, but that doesn't make any sense. Senior White House official did not know who operated the Autopen. Well, that's where the criminal conspiracy starts. If you don't know who operates the Autopen, and the Autopen pardoned Cheney and Kinzinger and Schiff and all of these people, that points to the Autopen pardons being null and void. You have to know who's operating the Autopens. And it's not a matter of the Autopen, it's a matter of, did Biden understand that an Autopen was pardoning the select committee? Was it his decision, or was it the decision of staffers
Let's talk about it. Joining me now is former federal prosecutor Katie Sharkowski. Katie, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Your reaction to this?
Well, it's certainly not surprising that there are remaining significant questions about the legitimacy of any actions taken by President Biden. Now, the use of the Autopen obviously is authorized and has been authorized by the Office of Legal Counsel for some time, but in conjunction with the known cognitive issues that he had, there is a serious question about whether he personally made those decisions or whether there were people acting on his behalf without his consent.
You know, it's interesting to look at Kevin O'Connor and his role here, because I remember looking at that assessment, that medical assessment. I had it on my desk for months. There was absolutely zero mention of any cognitive exam. That's true, based on what Comer told us. There was no mention whatsoever, even as so many people were questioning what's going on with Joe Biden right now, Ashley.
Yeah, no, that's what stuck out to me the most, because and actually this is a question for you, is what can they do legally if this is all true with what he did not do, which was obviously give half-answered reports and the 8 visits that weren't reported by the neurologist?
Well, it's interesting with a physician because obviously you have certain privileges, but when a physician is certifying publicly inaccurate or misleading information, then that does in fact waive those privileges. That does not exist at that point. So I think the medical board can look into it as far as licensing purposes. And then on the criminal side, whether there is evidence of intent and knowledge to conceal or defraud the American people, that is in fact a legitimate question, which is why I think this is being referred to the Justice Department, which would be the appropriate agency to look into this.
There was an effort to defraud the American people because the White House kept saying he was fine. All they have to do is find all the tweets and all the different communication, all the different times the White House press secretary and others said he's fine, he's totally fine, he's totally fine. That was deceptive. See, again, the Democrats want the American public to just accept anything they do as just fine and above board, or just they want the American public to treat them the way Democratic voters treat them. But Democratic voters will accept anything. They'll accept anything. Mamdani could be cheated in New York in a couple of days. They would still vote Democrat in New York. They'd be upset for maybe 2 minutes, like they were with Bernie Sanders. Democrats cheat their own candidates, and then they're livid if Trump says they cheated.
So we got to look at all the policy that took place during the Biden administration to really understand what is legitimate and what isn't legitimate. I mean, first of all the pardons. Lawrence Simonetti, you have covered this as well. All those pardons, I think the only pardon that Joe Biden actually signed was a pardon of Hunter Biden, his son. The rest of the pardons were by Autopen. Are they even legit?
Well, these are the questions. Who knows? Who knows, right? And it's interesting now, all this time later, we're seeing so many significant people, including the vice president, come out and say, yeah, well, we should have done this. We should have questioned this. And yet they let this man do, or let these people around this man do what they wanted to do with no oversight of it.
A wide open border. President Trump will say it's 20 million illegals who
So tomorrow we'll go through the entire GOP report leading to a criminal probe, the Biden Autopen presidency. We'll get to the conclusion tomorrow and throughout this week. This is a huge issue because there's a criminal probe now. So not only are they investigating Russiagate with Brennan and Comey and Clinton, Clinton will eventually be indicted. Now they're investigating everyone around Biden's auto. The Autopen might be even easier to investigate than Russiagate, which is very easy. They have all the information and declassified documents now. But here you have people saying, no, everything was fine. Everything was fine. I mean, it's like, well, but you were telling the American public the opposite. He was forced out by a George Clooney op-ed. And you expect the U.S. Supreme Court to back Autopen pardons from a president who was literally forced out by his own political party for mental and cognitive issues. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. I'll be here tomorrow. I'll have a live stream about 11 a.m., 12 noon. God bless you all. To my super chat, thank you to the new people on this live stream, to the new members, to the new subscribers.